Blake, this was a game I thought LSU was going to drop before the season. It was the only one before the season where Vegas had LSU as an underdog, but it doesn't excuse choking away a 10-point lead. And the funny thing about it, Blake, is
which should have been a 16-point lead.
Right. In many ways, yeah. With the special teams errors, this would have been up there with Brian Kelly when it comes to impressive 3-game runs in his whole career, right? Pulling off Ole Miss and then pulling off, a back-to-back road game situation that, you and I have discussed for many years. It sucks that they could not close the deal. And I don't know what you do. I don't know if you get David Goggins to come in and give a halftime speech or whatever, to get this team to have that killer instinct in the second half. But for some reason, Blake, I think we still don't know what a zone read is. We still don't know we still don't know how to guard that for whatever reason.
Well, here's the thing. Ironically, you've been a second half football team throughout this stretch.
Right?
Like, I mean, you have been coming out in halftime, giving up no points. Carter, you were holding teams to no touchdowns. Okay. Right. And then to your point, it was the number one thing that I talked about tonight. I've heard it. I've seen it on social media. I've heard it, seen it, and even watched it. I don't want to hear we didn't prepare for Marcel Reed. Carter, it's not true. First off, it's not true. Second off, even if you didn't, zone read principles were taught to you during preseason camp.
Yes.
They were taught to you during the South Carolina game and during the Arkansas game and all these different situations. Carter, you gave up a 75-yard touchdown to Lenore Sellers about 6 weeks ago, okay, on the same thing that Marcel Reed ran 7 times. 7 times. The jet sweep, zone read, inverted veer. So don't you dare tell me that Blake Baker didn't go over that with you in the film room. It's not true.
Yeah.
So I don't want to hear that anymore. However, this is what I'm going to say because I'm going to stick up for the defense here for one reason and one reason only. They have bailed you out of a lot of situations in the last couple of weeks. It was time for the offense to bail them out. Right? It was 1,000% time that, look, defense stood up for you against Ole Miss. It stood up for you again in the second half versus South Carolina. It stood up for you against Arkansas last week and was big for you. Carter, this was the time that the offense, hey, man, we're having troubles figuring this out. Can you go win this for me? Carter, with 8 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter, you were down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you threw an interception that sealed Texas A&M's fate. So I don't want to hear at that exact moment, Carter, you can't run the football. You can't do this. You can't do that. You're right. You can't do any of those things. But you are down 5 in a crucial situation. And the number one thing that you cannot do is turn the football over. You can't. I don't care if you can't run the ball. I don't care if Jesus Christ Almighty comes down from heaven and says, Blake, they can't run the ball. I don't care about that. You got at some point, that's the last thing, Carter, that you can do is turn the ball over. And you did it 3 times.
Yeah, and it's honestly the type of interceptions that bother me, right? So, Connor Wigman the week before versus Mississippi State had interceptions that were, pretty much 100% on him. And then these Garrett Nussmeier picks were him, right? I listened to the A&M DBs talk about it after the game. They're like, well, I couldn't believe that he's actually throwing these. And Blake, it was going to happen at some point. Garrett does throw these comeback routes really quickly, and there was going to be a time where DB finally got him on it.
The second interception that he threw against A&M was the one interception that I was like, happens.
Yeah.
Happens. Yeah. I mean, it just like he baited you. Okay, it happens. It's not your fault that Joe Sloan's making you throw from left hash to right boundary on a hitch. It's a stupid play call. It's a very – look, I'm not going to – I have no problem giving Garrett that one. That's a stupid play call. How about this? You got one-on-one bump and run, man-to-man coverage with Kyron Lacey on the other side. Why don't you throw that one?
Yeah, there were some other instances, and Blake, I think some of it is because they've really struggled, and it's some on Garrett and some on the receivers. They've really struggled with just straight go balls this year, and that's been very frustrating. As great as Garrett has been at times, the straight vertical pass has been an issue. And Blake, one thing that I feel has been a problem is all verts, right? It's just one play where they've really had issues. One, because they have had struggle, they struggle with protecting with the pocket collapsing. And number two, there was some rush opportunities for Garrett to scramble, and he wouldn't take them. At the end of the first half on that 3rd and 10, where he just threw a hopeful one up to Mason, that ball should never be thrown. It's just never going to be completed. Mason broke off where the DB was. It's just not where he should have gone with it. And I felt that was, and I'm not asking Garrett to turn into Jayden Daniels or anything like that, but part of running vertical routes, Blake, is the quarterback run game, right? And that's another reason why I think they should stop it.
It's what you do in a draw and a clear out.
Right, yeah.
Now, I will say this too. I will say this to push back on you. There's one thing. I watched your entire film study last night. By the way, phenomenal job. Absolutely phenomenal job, okay? You were fantastic. I agree with a lot of what you said. It was a fantastic film study. Y'all need to go over to Power Hour LSU and listen to it. There's a couple of problems that I have. The only issue that I had in what you were talking about that I disagree with, I don't think the pocket from an interior standpoint is actually bad. I think from a shorter quarterback, what did Drew do? Drew would take the extra step because he's a shorter quarterback to find that throwing lane.
Okay, no, that's fair.
Right. Like, I mean, and that's neither here nor there because you did. I mean, it wasn't like a massive thing that you were talking about, but it's the only thing. But here's the thing, Carter. You had what I consider, okay, either true turnovers or turnover-worthy plays, meaning missed field goals or turnover on downs. Like, Carter, why turnover on downs aren't listed as turnovers is beyond me. I mean, it says turnover in the name. Like, you turn the ball over on downs. I have no idea why it doesn't get listed. So that and missed field goals, along with the interceptions. Carter, you have 7 interceptions in the last 4 games. You have 3 turnover on downs and 3 missed field goals.
Yeah, it was very sloppy.
Carter,
yeah.
If I told you very quickly, if I rudely interrupt you, if I told you in the beginning of the season, there would be a month stretch where you have what we would consider, like me and you would consider, in breaking down a game, 12 turnover-worthy situations. Carter, you would think that we would lose 2 games in that. You are lucky to come out of this stretch only losing 1 football game, and that's the truth.
Yeah, and with the first-year starting quarterback, I'll take it. I will. Now,
you better, dude. Yeah, I don't care who your quarterback is. Yeah. First-year quarterback, second-year quarterback, Brett Favre. I don't give 2 Rudy Poos who it is. I mean, Carter, you're averaging 3 turnover-worthy situations on offense per game. 3.
Right. Yeah.
You're walking into the game averaging 3 turnover-worthy situations. You can't win football. So, Carter, I ask you this. Well, then, if they get rid of that, how good can this football team be?
Yeah, this is a struggle I have though, Blake. And you. By the way, when you were on my channel this weekend, you volunteered. You reached out to me to jump on it, and I'm glad you did. You crushed it. What's very interesting to me is, yes, we would like run blocking to be better. Yes, we would like Garrett to be better, but you being very critical of Joe Sloan tonight is, I would say, justified. I really would. I think this game.
Carter, we got Tradez Green blocking Nick Scorton.
Right, and then he had a block versus Shamar Stewart that was
idiotic. You literally told me in the press conference on Monday that you put him out in the slot because he can't be on the inline and block. And then you come into the game, and then you're using it against 2 defensive tackle or 2 defensive linemen. They're going to be in the first round.
Yeah, and honestly, on one of the blocks that he blew, George Kittle's not making that block.
No, you're talking about the outside zone.
Yeah, like
when he's
that,
on the backside. Yeah,
like Darnell Washington isn't making that block. Any tight end would tell you that
they're not. Offensive tackles aren't making that block.
Right.
Will Campbell's not making that block. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it honestly was bad. It really, really was bad. And honestly, it looked for potentially some Arkansas fans watching, it still like it was Dan Enos calling plays, right? He really struggled, Joe, getting the run game going. And Blake, just want to point this out. I just released on Twitter a run scheme that I saw work versus Alabama that I would like to see LSU implement next week.
What is it?
It's kind of complicated. At Power Hour LSU, I just tweeted it out. You guys can go watch it for yourself.
Wait until after the segment, then you can go watch.
No, yeah. Don't go right now. Don't go right now. But I say this because I don't want to say, hey, I'm criticizing Joe Sloan without providing specific examples on what you could do to help out. Basically, it's something that is going to help every single offensive lineman out. And now, Blake, there's modern rushing schemes. Lane Kiffin runs a lot of these.
Are you talking about a wide zone inverted veer, like where you pull a counter and the running back's on the right, you have the the tackle and guard pull, and then you're just going outside where no offensive lineman's affected in that?
Yeah. Yes, that's essentially it. And I said it verbally during the film study last night. Those types of plays can really get an offense going. Because, Blake, there was instances last night where Nick Scorton wasn't even playing any type of backside contain. Literally, when LSU would, pull their lineman one way, he would full speed sprint to the other side and make tackles, right? So that is a really, really bad first year design flaw. Something you would see a first year coordinator draw up. And honestly, Blake, no one's really going to succeed with that type of play calling. And as I got tagged in this quite a bit. There's a lot of first down pass fails, second down run, right? And the sequencing needs to be better. And when you think of the best play callers, it's not necessarily their play calls that are the best. It's how they sequence them, right? And Joe Sloan, up to this point in the season, has had a very predictable sequence. And it was pretty clear that A&M had picked up on it. And that also...
Carter, if we can pick up on it, they can pick up on it.
Right. And I want everyone to know this. I'm not a former player, coach. When I do film studies, I'm just giving you my best educated guesses.
Carter, they can get the coaches can get over it. They can get over it. Say your point.
Right. I am one person, right? There are teams of analysts that pick up signals and all of that. We're having an issue telling a story, right? We have an issue putting the defense at odds on what we could potentially do. And the thing that really makes that hard, Blake, and I understand I go back to the Garrett Nussmeier scramble stuff, is that we don't really do a whole lot as an offense that will keep a defensive lineman guessing. So in other words, the run that we're going to run, if we pull linemen, that's where we're running the football. Okay. If our running back is going one way, that's where the play is going. When we drop back to pass, the defensive linemen know that the quarterback aren't going to run. The linebackers know that the quarterback's not going to run. So you eliminate a lot of different things for what the defense could think you could be doing, if that makes sense. And
100%.
And so it's not just the play calling and the sequencing that becomes predictable. It's how your games actually play that become predictable, right? Like, obviously, just to point out the brilliance of like Jaden Daniels, you never know which play is going to be run or how that play is going to end up, right?
Like a Hail Mary.
Right. Like and what's funny about that Hail Mary is that you knew a Hail Mary was coming, and Jaden still did something crazy to buy as much time as he possibly could. That's what I feel is missing. I really feel like the defenses have really keyed in on a lot of the things that LSU is doing. And if you become, Blake, just a slight bit more unpredictable, the group that helps out the most is the offensive line, right? Because there was, and to go back to the trade as green block, if you know that some of your players are struggling to block, you have got to do things to help them out instead of keep trying to run just basic zone blocking right, zone blocking left, because that's difficult, right? They're already struggling with executing the box to begin with. Why not add a few extra wrinkles, eye candy to make things a little bit easier for them?
Here's the only thing that I'm going to push back on. That the thing that bothers me, or not even push back on. Here's the thing that bothers me the most. You know that it's not working and then you can't do it. Right? Like you know that you're having issues running the football, regardless of the situation. Carter, they're playing two-man high. Two safeties. They're playing man-to-man coverage underneath. Aaron Anderson's wide open. What are we doing? Why are you in an intermediate passing game not going back to Aaron Anderson on these slant routes, on these out routes, on these short little hitches? Why? Carter, we should have lined up and made them stop Aaron Anderson.
Yeah, and I felt, for me, Blake, and I understand the intercept. I know the interceptions were bad, but I felt some of Garrett's decisions on non-interceptions were just as bad. So let's take the Chris Hilton go ball down the sideline. That is a very low percentage throw for a guy that's just now playing again, who doesn't really have the absolute best track record on actually catching deep passes.
Well,
right?
And work him into the game.
Right. And they were doing that. I would have never thrown that, right? On that same play, you had Aaron Anderson on a whip route.
Wide open.
Wide open. He was open. And that's where he should have gone, right? That's exactly where the ball should have been thrown. And I will also tell you this. There were some people that were worried about Aaron Anderson going into this game, going up against A&M's defense, because they had some issues with some slot guys, some shifty slot guys. And I felt like that's what LSU should have kept doing, right? They could not stop Aaron Anderson on a slant. They could not stop him at all. Arkansas couldn't stop him. And I would have kept just spamming the football, targeting him. And the good thing,
he should have had 10 targets.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, maybe even more than that, Blake. I mean, he got open a shit ton in that game. And I was a little shocked that we didn't keep going, right?
Well, here's the thing. Do you know what Bama runs? It's their base defense anyway. Carter, they're going to be in man-to-man coverage with two high safeties. I mean, that they did it against Vandy. When Vandy was running all over them, they didn't adjust. They did it against Georgia. They done it against everybody.
Right.
And here's the deal. With Aaron Anderson, that's going to happen again. Carter, it's the problem that I have with that. It's not just against this team that this has happened. It's not. I mean, Carter, these slot guys are having troubles with Aaron Anderson. You want to know why you beat Ole Miss? It's because you finally went to him. 3 weeks ago, I came on the show. I'm like, brother, he is wide open in the red zone. Me and you talked about it. I'm like, look, man, I get that the dude's 5'7" and you don't want to go to a guy. Well, you're throwing him a jump ball for an interception. Might as well throw the ball to him when he's actually making plays for you. That in and of itself, okay, is so dumb to me. That's the part where I'm saying, Carter, why are we not with iPads on the sidelines, screenshots on these iPads of what's going on during plays? If you're Jones Sloan, how are you not seeing that? I could forgive a college coach back in the day when they didn't have the footage of the plays in the sequence beforehand. He is on the headset. You're on the iPad. You're going through still shot photos. How are you missing that? That is abysmal. It's abysmal because if I can see it with my naked eye that this guy's wide ass open, what are we doing?
Yeah, Blake, I'm with you. Like I was honestly shocked, like how much Aaron was missing. Obviously, the vertical catch, where that was somewhat of a dangerous throw, but he made a really good play on it. He was just phenomenal, and that's why I wanted to bring him up as well, is because I also thought Blake Caden Durham had another good game, and that's what's kind of frustrating to me. We
legitimately threw him the ball out of the backfield once, and then the second time we tried to go to him, they covered it, and then we didn't go back to it because they covered it the second time.
Yeah, on the little rollout.
Well, here's the thing. So what? No. So they covered it once. Oh, cute. They covered it once. By the way, he's going up against a defensive end. You know that, right? If he's led enough there, Carter, he's going to catch the sidelines and get you 8 yards. And here's the other thing. You have a hitch or a comeback. You have a back in the flat. It's a 2-read look, right? And then you have a tight end coming across the middle. So 1, 2, 3. You have technically a 3-person look. Carter, if Nuss runs there, that's a first down. It's a first down. Without a doubt. Because here's the thing. Contain has to be broken when a defensive end is out in a pattern with a running back.
Yeah. I will let me ask you this.
Okay.
You mentioned Emory Jones going in at guard. Would you switch out centers?
You don't have a center on this team.
Right. So
I'm not. I get what you're saying about him in your film study. He whiffed on some of them. Okay. Here's the problem with the counter run, the fake counter run, when there was a couple of them where Will Campbell pulled and he had to take up DJ Chester's guy. Here's the problem with that. The run's not supposed to go in the hole where Will Campbell is blocking. So this is my humble opinion. My humble opinion is that the running back is lined up on the wrong side of the quarterback. You never run a counter and you're handing it off right. Carter, he's handing the ball off right and Will is pulling. So you're supposed to run a counter right up his ass cheek. So regardless of what
So you're saying flip the running back to
he should have flipped the running back. You see what I'm saying? Like, how can you hand the ball off right and then you have a counter that's supposed to go off the ass cheek of Will Campbell? The only reason you're doing that is because they got to either come down and take him. You got to throw it in the flat. It's an automatic win of a play. The problem is, number one, Nuss does not move the running back over to get him in the right position. And even if DJ Chester is supposed to, even if he completely whiffs and clears him out or pins him, Carter, counters are pin plays where you run and you pin the side of the defender. You got to be on the ass cheek of Will. He's on the opposite side of Will.
Okay.
So the only way for that to happen is that the running back is lined up in the wrong position. It's the only way. It's the only way that you can counteract that. Now, maybe that's how the play is drawn up. I don't know. I don't know any of that. But I do think that DJ, for what it's worth, he's had a lot of Carter only Lloyd Cushenberry saw more guys play nose or be up on the nose more than I think that DJ Chester has. Here's the problem with that. They know, meaning teams, that, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to tell you what I've heard. There are people in the SEC, defensive coordinators, that think if they just bull rush with DJ Chester, okay, and they show exotic looks, that Nuss is going to get flustered if something's in his face. They know that. And so I think that when you look at DJ, I'm giving him a little grain of salt that Nuss has either got to step up and run or step up in that bitch. Carter, I'm going to be real with you. This is the realest I've probably ever been on this show. At some point, you got to stand up in that bitch and fire it and say, let's go, motherfucker. Let's go. Because this is football. I am tired of the pussyfooting, the non-toughness in some situations. It's not just Nuss. It seems like I'm signaling him out. It's not just him. But when a dude bull rushes you, if you're Miles Frazier and this should have been a penalty, but DJ Chester has a hand in his throat. If you're the guard, you got to go decleat a motherfucker.
Right, help him out. Yeah.
You got to help him out. Why are you fanning to one of the best tackles in the game in Emory Jones? You have no business whatsoever to fan out to Emory Jones. Go light somebody's rib cage open.
No, yeah,
that's the thing, Charter. We are missing toughness.
Oh, you think they
No, I don't think. I
you
know
know.
we're missing toughness. It's about time you go fuck somebody's rib cage up.
Yeah, look, honestly, I'm a little shocked that offensive guards don't look for that because those are the viral plays. Those are your truck sticks. Those are when
Adrian McGee on line 1, Vanderbilt's calling.
Right. I mean, if you want to make a Cole Kublik clip, that's what you do. Clean. Nobody cares if it's you kind of blindsiding the guy in the.
You can't allow a center who's got a hand that's missing, that when he's got a guy head up on him, for him to get his second hand up on there. He is at more of a disadvantage than anybody.
Yeah, and this is where I'll also defend DJ Chet. I do think they should make a switch there, but I don't think they have another option, especially with the unit.
Move him to guard. Move him to guard.
Yeah, or it's going to be hard. Let's just say.
Oh, did you hear that?
What? It's going to be hard.
Just popped. But yeah, that too. That's what she said.
Yeah. That's what I thought. I thought that's what the dramatic pause is. But honestly, I like DJ Chester coming out of high school. I didn't think he was going to be a center. But I will say the way that the LSU offense is run, number one, he has faced a murderer's row of a lot of NFL defensive tackles. It's been difficult matchups versus a lot of 4- and 5-star guys. I don't remember a center, maybe since Lloyd Cushenberry. He played a lot of like 5-star guys.
This is where you miss Lance Hurd. You want to call it the truth? This is where you miss him, because you could put Emory at guard and Lance at right tackle, and things would be alleviated. You have one missing link. Yeah,
you're missing, especially with Tyree Adams out. They were expecting him to be the number 6 to where you can have a little bit more leeway. And like I said a million times in the film today, I wasn't going to be critical of Paul Mabenga at all. Man, that's a tough spot.
I thought he held his own. I'm going to be real with you.
I did too.
He held his own. Paul Mabenga held his own against a really talented defensive line.
Right. So look, I do think the way the LSU offense is constructed, that it is really hard to play center in it, right? But overall, whether it's a zone read or any of that, I thought before the season LSU was going to lose this game. If someone stuck a gun to my head and said, hey, pick the one game that you think they're going to lose. Blake, you know me pretty well. There's a lot of things that A&M does that going into the season I felt would be some weaknesses for us, and it was on the back end of a back-to-back road game. So now you're in a spot where take all the X's and O's, take everything else that I've said up to this point just out of the equation. If you're a true playoff team with actual national championship aspirations, a true playoff team wins all 4 of these games, right? This is how it's always been pre the 12-team playoff, right? Just because we're in a 2-loss era where you can lose 2 games and still make the playoff does not change the standards, right? Because if you do that, you're spitting in the face of all the other LSU teams that would win all these games and actually play in national championship bowls or play in big games, right? So no matter what, the only thing that's changed, Blake, as far as the discussion that we have, is your room for error has grown, but nothing else changes. You normally, if you were really going to be a real New Year's Six or Sugar Bowl playoff contender, national championship contender, you would need to win all your fucking games in November anyway, right? So step up, like you said, get tough. And if you win all 4 of these games, you're a true playoff team. You're in, right? And I would prefer it to be that way anyway. Now, as Brian Kelly mentioned, when they asked him about it in the post game, sure, it's just one less game that, the wiggle room, there is no room for error moving forward. But I actually kind of like, from you take away, Blake, my LSU allegiances and how much I hate Bama, I kind of like the fact from a neutral perspective that both of these teams have 2 losses for this reason. Every year since 2010, LSU versus Alabama was a playoff game. You win, you're still in it. You lose, you're out of it. And guess what? We get one more year of this, right? So it's the same exact scenario that LSU was in 2022, where you needed to win that game to go to the SEC championship game. You needed to win that game to stay in a distant playoff hunt. It's the same thing here. And if you win this game versus Alabama, get ready for the quick turnaround for the Bama hangover, because it's going to get even tougher with Vanderbilt and with everything else that you have coming up. So I'm really excited about this next month. I'm really excited to get Brian Kelly, on the P's and Q's to get everything locked and ready to go. And part of the benefit of Marcel Reed doing what he did is now we know we can't have this zone read unacceptableness versus Jalen Milroe here in a few weeks.
I agree with you. You got to find ways to bounce back, man. I mean, it's doable.
Yeah.
And here's the last thing I'd say to you before I get you out of here. Brian Kelly said, "Judge me on year 3." I don't want to go to a Cheez-It Bowl. I don't want to go to a Cheez-It Bowl. Like this is what you said. You promised me in year 3 you would be in this situation. Okay. I have relied on you. I've put in faith in you to lead this program, and for what it's worth, you've done a good job at it. You had a Heisman Trophy winner. You brought him in. You won the West in 22. How are you going to respond? And I got to be real with you. You got to find a way to make your team tough, because I am about sick and tired of seeing this pillow shit in the interior of the offensive line. But look, none of that also, and to their point, Carter, the defense was only going to step up for you somewhat. It's not like 35 points, or actually, guys, 28 points. Carter, they had 28 points with 8 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. One more quarter, okay? They have done so much for you. Go get 7 and change the momentum.
Yeah. And
look, there are going to be games. There have been games with Nick Saban where his teams have won and he's given up 40 points. Like, that has happened before. That is 1,000% happened. Yeah. But what do they always do? They play complementary football. And the one thing, I don't know what Brian Kelly's got to do. I don't know. He has well more of experience than I do, clearly, on what he needs to do. But you got to tell Nussmeier that these turnovers has got to stop, Carter. I'm sorry. They got to stop. They have to stop. So,
And Blake, one thing as far as like the 28 defensive points, that's in the end of zone read stuff. Yeah, it's embarrassing that someone threw 2 passes and completed both of them, and then you lost the way that you did. But
they had 8 completions and we lost the game.
Yeah, and there's a lot of short fields as well because of the turnovers, right? So,
and think about this: of those 2 scoring drives, one started at the 8 and one started at the 18. Think about that for a moment.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't. That's the part. I think what fans see is, okay, you know what? Okay, Nuss threw a couple picks. That's okay, whatever. He threw a couple picks. They don't understand that one touchdown drive, literally, they scored 14 points off of 26 yards.
Oh, and it's just a recipe, especially if you're on the road. And like I brought up this point to you, and Blake, I'm not a very unquantifiable kind of guy. Right? It's just not my thing. I like to have a stat or a play, something specific. But there was a big debate last week about momentum in sports, if it really exists or not. If there was ever a game where momentum is like the real deal, there might not be an objective momentum stat, but anybody that watched that game that felt that A&M was going to win by 15, you pass me the blunt. There's not a single person that would have seen that coming, right? That is momentum. That is being on the road in front of 100,000 people for the second straight week. It's one of those things, and it's really hard. So momentum does exist in sports, and if there was an example, it would be that game.
21 points and 50 yards.
It's insane. No, it really is insane.
It really is insane. And here's the truth, man. That's not all on the defense. It just makes it look like it's that much worse.
Right.
You know, it makes them look that much worse because of it. Okay, so they gave up an 8-yard run. I mean, okay, Jordan Gilbert tackled him at the goal line. Okay, so he got 8 yards. Okay, what was the touchdown?
Yeah.
I mean, like, Carter, there comes a part here where I'm like, look, here's how I feel. Last thing, I promise. I swear to God.
No, I got one more
thing
after this.
I feel like people feel when they come to AYS and they think about me or what I say about these turnovers, that I am some unhinged lunatic that doesn't like a specific person. It's just not true. I promise you it's not true. But if I told you that A&M would have 21 points and 50 yards, you would say that we threw 3 pick sixes. That's what you would have said, okay? And the defense is playing great, and you keep turning the ball over. They're not even on the field. I mean, Carter, that is pure insanity, and it's got to stop. So
yeah, and one thing I think is going to be interesting, if you're and teams are going to spam zone read versus LSU 1,000 times.
Jalen Milroe is going to run the ball 15 times.
Right. So look, like, I'm a big Blake Baker guy. When they hired him, I thought that was the right move and all those different things. You brought up, the guys that he's really struggled with are the dual threat runners, right? The thing, though, that interests me is Blake Baker always has his guys thinking about making plays and havoc and all those things. When you play zone read teams, yes, playmaking is important, but zone reads in theory, Blake, are very direct plays. They're plays that happen very fast, right? The first thing you need to do as a defender is do your job, right? Don't think about making the big play, because if you do, that's the point of the zone read, right? You're giving your quarterback and running back a chance to read a play, stick their foot in the ground, and get as downhill as they possibly can. And if you leave a wide open gap versus zone read stuff, whether it's a running back having it or the QB having it, you're going to get destroyed. So you must have your guys understanding which gap they need to be in at all times, right? And even the best LSU defensive players struggle with this, right? I understand wanting to go make a play. I understand wanting to get back there, and that's a good mentality to have. But versus South Carolina, this happened a lot. Gaps wide open. And it happened again versus Texas A&M. So until you fix that, it's gonna keep